It started with dancing, uncontrollable dancing. A dancing mania that spread through a town until dozens of people collapsed and writhed on the ground in agony, unable to still their bodies and suppress their gyrations. And this would go on for months. The spastic dancing and convulsive writhing would continue until they die from exhaustion. This actually happened in the Middle Ages, and it was called the Dancing Plague of 1518. But was this a case of mental illness, mass hysteria, or perhaps a mass poisoning? Or maybe the cause of the dancing plague was something far more supernatural. The Dancing Plague of 1518 was a case of dancing mania that occurred in Strasbourg, or modern-day France, in the Holy Roman Empire from July 1518 to September 1518. Somewhere between 50 and 400 people took to dancing for weeks. There are many theories behind the phenomenon, the most popular being stress-induced mass hysteria, suggested by John Waller. Other theories include ergot poisoning. There is controversy concerning the number of deaths. The outbreak began in July 1518, when a woman known as Frau Trophia and her daughter, Fraulein Emma Gutz, began to dance fervently and uncontrollably in a street in Strasbourg. According to Ned Pennant Rea, Frau Trophia had started dancing on the 14th of July on the narrow cobbled street outside her half-timbered home. As far as we can tell, she had no musical accompaniment, but simply began to dance. Some of those who had witnessed her strange performance had begun to mimic her, and within days more than 30 choreomaniacs were in motion. Some saw monomaniacally that only death would have the power to intervene. Trophia kept up the constant dancing for a week. Soon, 36 others joined in. This is known and believed by some to be a perfect example of a nocebo effect, which can make some feel ill simply by being under the expectation of being ill. By August, the dancing plague had claimed 400 victims. Dancers were beginning to collapse. The victims' movements were described as spasmodic, with many convulsions, and their bodies were left drenched in sweat. Their arms would thrash violently, and some noted that their eyes were vacant and expressionless. Blood would pool into their swollen feet, and they would eventually bleed into their shoes. Often, there would also be cries for help from the affected. If the victims did not succumb to a heart attack, they would collapse from extreme exhaustion, hunger, and thirst. There were as many as 15 deaths per day during the outbreak's peak, but the final number of fatalities is unknown today. No one knew what caused this reaction, which meant no one understood how to remedy it. By early September, the outbreak began to subside. Historical documents, including physician notes, cathedral sermons, local and regional chronicles, and even notes issued by the Strasbourg City Council, are clear that the victims danced. It is not known why. Historical sources agree that there was an outbreak of dancing after a single woman started dancing, and the dancing did not seem to die down. It lasted for such a long time that it even attracted the attention of the authorities until the council gave up authority to the physicians, who prescribed the afflicted to dance themselves free of it. There are claims that guild halls were refurbished to accommodate the dancing, as well as musicians and strong people to help keep those dealing with the dancing mania to stay upright. This backfired, and the council was forced to ban public dancing as people danced in fear it was a punishment from Saint Vitus. and to be free of sin, many joined in on the dancing epidemic. It was widely believed that when demonic possession was the cause of such gyrating dances and frenetic writhing, only those with divinely bestowed authority could restore the sinners to wholeness and to a right relationship with the divine. The council went as far as to ban music as well. Those who danced were then ordered to go to the shrine of Saint Vitus, wear red shoes that were sprinkled with holy water and had painted crosses on the tops and soles. They also had to hold small crosses in their hands, and incense and Latin incantations were part of this ritual. Word was spread of a successful ritual, and the dancing plague had ended in September, when the remaining dancers were taken to a mountaintop to pray for absolution. Events similar to this are said to have occurred throughout the medieval age, including 11th century in Kolbik, Saxony, where it was believed to be the result of divine judgment. In 15th century Italy, a woman was bitten by a tarantula, the venom making her dance convulsively. The only way to cure the bite was to shimmy and writhe, and to have the right sort of music available, which was an accepted remedy by scholars like Athanasius Kircher. Contemporaneous explanations included demonic possession and overheated blood. Controversy exists over whether people ultimately danced to death. Some sources claim that for a period the plague killed around 15 people per day, but the sources of the city of Strasbourg at the time of the events did not mention the number of deaths, or even if there were fatalities. There do not appear to be any sources related to the events that make note of any fatalities. Ned Pennant Rea also claims that the final death toll is not known, but if the claims of 15 people dying per day were true, then the toll could be into the hundreds. The main source for the claim is John Waller, who has written several journal articles on the subject, and the book A Time to Dance, A Time to Die, the extraordinary story of the dancing plague of 1518. The sources cited by Waller that mention deaths were all from later accounts of the events. There is also uncertainty around the identity of the initial dancer, either an unnamed woman or Frau Trophia, and the number of dancers involved somewhere between 50 and 400. Of the 6 chronicle accounts, 4 support Lady Trophia as the first dancer. Some believe the dancing could have been brought on by food poisoning caused by the toxic and psychoactive chemical products ophirgot fungi, ergotism, which grows commonly on grains, such as rye, used for baking bread. The same fungus has also been implicated in other major historical anomalies, including the Salem witch trials. In The Lancet, John Waller argues that this theory does not seem tenable, since it is unlikely that those poisoned by ergot could have danced for days at a time. Nor would so many people have reacted to its psychotropic chemicals in the same way. The ergotism theory also fails to explain why almost every outbreak occurred somewhere along the Rhine and Moselle rivers, areas linked by water but with quite different climates and crops. This could have been an example of fully developed cases of psychogenic movement disorder happening in mass hysteria or mass psychogenic illness, which involves many individuals suddenly exhibiting the same bizarre behavior. The behavior spreads rapidly and broadly in an epidemic pattern. This kind of comportment could have been caused by elevated levels of psychological stress, caused by the ruthless years, even by the rough standards of the early modern period. The people of Alsace were suffering. Waller speculates that the dancing was stress-induced psychosis on a mass level, since the region where the people danced was riddled with starvation and disease, and the inhabitants tended to be superstitious. 7 other cases of dancing plague were reported in the same region during the medieval era. This psychogenic illness could have created choria, from the Greek choria meaning to dance, a situation comprising random and intricate unintentional movements that flit from body part to body part. Diverse chorias, such as St. Vitus's dance, St. John's dance, and Tarantism, were labeled in the Middle Ages, referring to the independent epidemics of dancing mania that happened in Central Europe, particularly at the time of the plague. The dancing plague of 1518 has turned up in a lot of popular art in recent years. The event inspired Jonathan Glazer's 2020 short film Strasbourg 1518. It was the inspiration behind the 2022 choral song Choreomania by Florence and the Machine. It was the 3rd track on the album Dance Fever, which took its title from the song. The event is the subject of the graphic novel The Dancing Plague by Gareth Brooks, published by Self-Made Hero in 2021. Kieran Millwood Hargrave's 2022 novel The Dance Tree also discusses the events. The book series, a collection of utter speculation, released a title, The Dancing Plague, a collection of utter speculation in 2022. It is a fictional account of the events that happened in Strasbourg. The event is referenced in the 2024 song Writhing 1518, in both title and lyrics, created by rap duo Grim Salvo. This event inspired the music video short film for Lorena Oliver Arnold's joint 2025 release of their songs In the Sound of Breathing and Opening under the name Sages. This event was referenced in the 39 Clues book, Super Special, Outbreak by C. Alexander London. No one knows for sure what caused the dancing plague of 1518, but it will still stand as one of mankind's most bizarre and mysterious tragedies. But was this tragedy the result of explainable, real-world phenomena? Or was the DJ of this insidious rave the devil himself?